food? This is amazing.
Shut up. I haven't eaten
Thank
yet.
you. I wanted to get the gang together because, Al, I thought you brought up some really interesting points the last time we were chatting, and I just wanted to talk through baseball-specific things with you. This is so – thank you. Wow.
Hey, concentrate. Come on.
Sorry. It's so exciting. So 2 things I think we touched on is I wanted to make sure that I felt like when we were having our college discussion about the questionnaire that it was kind of basketball dominated. And I just wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable reaching out to your network with your more baseball focused questions.
Yeah, it's no problem. I have a questionnaire that I've used, in pro ball and college ball, it's no problem to produce that. I know what all the questions they want to know. I spoke to a couple of my friends that are college coaches yesterday. So yeah, that's no problem. I just put it on as you can tell already, I'm not that tech savvy. So
it's not you. This is like a lot of new technology and we're all kind of fiddling around with it for the first time. So don't feel like it's you.
Okay.
That's a whole new concept.
Okay. Yeah. I do feel like it's me because I'm not that tech savvy, but anyway, whatever you tell me to put it up on or download it or upload it or whatever, that's not a problem. I'll just, or if you want me to just email it to you.
Why don't you just email it to Greg and I so that we can take a look at it and go from there. We don't have to make anything crazy. Just email it to us.
Okay.
And again, like we're trying to answer the question of like, what are their pain points and what can we build onto this app that can help them? So let's just make sure that those questions address that.
Yep. Greg and I discussed it the other day. Greg came by here, got a chance to see our operation and stuff.
I heard it's amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we got about 15, 20 kids running around out there right now. So we're back up and operating. But
are they wearing masks?
What's that?
Are they wearing masks?
Well, when the kids check in, we give them the option to wear the masks. All of our instructors are. But the kids take them off after about 5 minutes,
Yeah, of course.
It's hard when you're sweating and like trying to get a workout in to have a mask on. It's tough.
Yeah, you can't breathe right. And, the kids are, I don't want to say they're impervious to the COVID, but obviously they're not as much at risk as us older people. But yeah, it's going so far so good. So far so good.
So the other thing I wanted to dive in with you. So yeah, just send us that email and
yeah,
we'll take a look at it. And then honestly, obviously, and this was part of the email I sent yesterday is we're a little behind on that one pager. And so it doesn't make sense for you guys to send anything out without it. So I'm going to get the greater gang together after our Zoom on Monday, just to kind of review what it looks like with that one pager and how we can package these things and get them off to coaches.
Yep.
But I wanted to dive into, you had thrown out the idea of these kind of like Mets camps or Yankees camps or these things that you said you thought of for years. And I wanted to get a better understanding of what your thought process was around those kind of pro team sponsored leagues or recruiting things, or I wasn't 100% sure.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if I really got into like my experience with you guys. I mean, Greg knows, but I played with the Twins, Cardinals, and Angels. It was 18 years of pro ball. Aside from playing with those teams, I also played a year of pro baseball in Italy. I played in Taiwan. I played winter ball in Puerto Rico.
That's really cool.
But yeah, so I traveled around quite a bit and played for a long time. And one of the things that I noticed, especially as I got deeper into my career, was and from working with front office people, they could really give a shit about the players. They care more about obviously their brand, money, putting more people in the stands, all that kind of stuff. And
Al, you're talking to, it's funny. So my dad played for the Expos.
Oh, really?
And he was a pitcher. So
really?
I grew up in a really unique combination of my dad is a absolute purist when it comes to sports. The man tried to put a wooden tennis racket in my hand recently and was like, you should try tennis with this. And I was like, Dad, we've advanced a little. Like I had to buy him new golf clubs for Christmas a couple of years ago because he was not letting go of his woods, his actual woods. And when his daughter was out driving him, he was getting offended. So trust me, I grew up, he was an interesting athlete because he pitched for the Expos and he was simultaneously playing minor league hockey for the Red Wings.
What years was he with the Expos?
He's 70 to 73, I think.
Oh, okay.
Drafted 67. Buzz Patterson.
That's your dad, Buzz Patterson?
Yeah, do you know him?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Wow.
Yeah. Chip off the old block. So you'll get a kick out of this. So Buzz would zing balls at me at as a 5-year-old. And so I, of course, naturally become, and again, this is like a Patterson curse, is we both are probably way better at baseball than we are at hockey, but we just love hockey so much that all we wanted to do was play hockey. So he blew his knee out playing hockey for the Red Wings, and that ended his baseball career.
Wow.
They put it together 5 times. He had 5 full knees. They put it the 5th time, they're like, dude, this is not happening. He was devastated. And he was actually, not to take up a story, but this is actually really funny. So anyway, I ended up being a really good hitter because he freaking flung things at me at 1,000,000 miles an hour, starting as a 5-year-old.
That's funny.
But again, I got heavily recruited in softball and got declared hockey for Division I as a sophomore. So I got recruited for softball pretty heavily, but I led the state in home runs. Gosh, junior and senior year, I think. And honestly, the laughing stock of the family is I'm the slowest runner in America. So I had to hit the ball that far to get around the bases because I'm just so slow. I couldn't do it. I was horrible. But yeah, so my dad pitched pro and then he played pro hockey.
That's awesome. Where do you go to college? Syracuse?
He did go to Syracuse.
Uh-huh.
And, funny enough, his last game in the pros, he was out in San Francisco. And I'm on my way. Here I am, an executive at Major League Baseball, on my way out to the San Francisco All-Star game. And he was like, this is 10 years ago, 15 years, 12 years ago. It was ages ago. He goes, that was my last pro game. And I was like, okay. He goes, there's the best Irish pub out there. And I'm like, Dad, this was 35 years ago. I doubt that pub exists. And he's like, they had a Mona Lisa drinking Guinness. That pub exists. I'm telling you. I can't remember the name of it. It was an Irish pub. I'm telling you, I puked my guts out, funny enough, on the plane ride out there. And my boss was like, we got to get you a Guinness or something. It's so funny. I'm standing there all these years later, working for Major League Baseball. I'm hammering my Guinness and having a cup of soup. And I look up and it's the freaking Mona Lisa drinking Guinness. The pub was named Foley's. It was next to our hotel. We had dinner there every night for 2.5 weeks.
That's hilarious.
It was hilarious. It's just so small world. But yeah, so my dad pitched. So I grew up and Buzz, I was telling Greg the other day, had a really, really good scouting experience growing up. His scout shot him straight. There was none of this fluff of your kid's going to be fantastic. Honestly, his parents did not want him to play pro ball. He would have gone way higher. I mean, he was still drafted ahead of Dusty Baker, but he would have gone way higher, but he declared he was going to college. And honestly, he ended up not going his senior year because his dad passed away and he finally was like, screw it, I'm playing baseball. Wow. And that's how he ended up. I think he was drafted by the Braves and got traded up to Montreal. But so it's funny. I grew up with a dad who, in my mind, worked in finance, and I wasn't around when he was playing pro ball, but he was a good athlete, but always raised us as sports are fun. This is supposed to be a good time. If you're not having fun, you're not playing. But I mean, honestly, I grew up watching him. I still, when I watch, I'm like, you're pitching lower left, upper right. Here comes the slider. Every game I watch, I feel like he's right in my head. So I grew up with a dad that played in the pros. But it's interesting to pair that to what you're about to say with how the executives look at things, which is very, very different. And I do have experience from that side too. So I'm a unique combination because I'm a sports purist, but I know the business side too.
Right, you get it. Yeah, there was actually a guy that I played with whose dad played with your dad. So I remember him mentioning.
Oh my God! Well, my dad was an animal.
The guy that I played with was Steve Renko, and his dad was Steve Renko also, and he definitely played with your dad because he played for the Expos for a long time.
Oh my God! I can't wait to tell him. I'm going to see him tonight.
Yeah, Steve Renko, big dude, probably 6'7", 6'8". Wow. From Kansas, I think. From I'm trying to remember what town, but Yeah, I think the one I played was Steve Renko Jr. He was raised in Kansas, but
He still talks to my dad. Still talks to his catcher like three times a week.
Overland Park, Kansas, and Steve Renko Jr. went to Kansas before he signed. So he still talks with his catcher. So his catcher back then was
he went through the minors up with Stan Todd.
Okay.
But Stan, I think, had a career-ending injury, and I'm not 100% sure made it to the pros.
So your dad grew up in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, my dad also went to boarding school and got kicked out like pretty quick. With like, I'm telling you, the man's an animal.
And you played ice hockey or field hockey?
Ice hockey.
Oh, you played ice hockey. Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you're hardcore.
He and I are very similar athletes in the sense that I wouldn't say that we were the best, but we worked really, really hard, and we were both uber aggressive. My brother was the total opposite. My brother and I are 18 months apart, so like we actually were on the same baseball team most of our lives. My brother's like a pure finesse, like such a different athlete. Like Buzz and I were absolutely hammering people, and my brother's like dipsy doing in between people. I'll never forget the Detroit Red Wings called our house to recruit Chester, my brother, and my dad's like, "You recruited me like 40 years ago," and the guy goes, "Yeah, your son's a totally different athlete." And my dad's like, "Yeah, no, in a better way." Like my dad was like, we were like, I spent most of my time in the penalty box, as did he. And my brother definitely was like Wayne Gretzky. Like my brother was dipsy doing and scoring goals. So like the fact that the Red Wings called, my dad's like, "Do you know you called me?" And he's like, "Oh, nobody can forget you." Dad was an animal.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
This is so funny. I can't wait to tell him. He'll be so excited. He's having a hard time with all this COVID. He doesn't realize he's above 70 and has been smoking since he was 13. He's like, I'm like, dude, you got to wear a mask. He's like, I'm not doing that.
There was another guy that played with your dad that he may have played with your dad. He was one of the original Mets, and then he went to Montreal, and he was the pitching coach at St. John's for a long time. And I knew him as a pitching coach in the Expos organization, a guy named Larry Bernarth.
I'm going to ask him.
He was a great guy. He actually was the guy that kind of like got Randy Johnson right, because I played against Randy Johnson in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
And before he became like the great pitcher he was like throwing balls off the backstop, and he had no command of anything. His release point was different on every pitch, and Larry Bernarth kind of like straightened him out.
Some people just have, I think some people can like, pitching is so different than the rest of that sport because it's such an art. You have to like, it's just when you're teaching any other positional, like in baseball, it's just pitching is like the fact that you can diagnose it like a golf swing, like it's that mechanical. It's just crazy that some people really have that gift that they can watch somebody and be like, this is what you're doing. And they can just, it's such a tweak and it changes your whole perspective on everything.
Big time. Yeah. Tell that to the spoiled rich kids that live around here. But yeah.
That right there, you just sounded like my dad.
But that's who I deal with. Greg knows our audience. We've had this conversation. So.
Well, I grew up with a coach that used to fire slap shots at me. So, oh my God, this is so funny. But anyways, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I think that when you started to talk about this idea that you were having, I've done a lot with, quite frankly, a lot of the youth baseball side for the leagues and stuff like for the league. And then obviously the teams are kind of given their marching orders and then they just do with it whatever the hell they want. But I thought it was worth having the conversation because I think obviously between the two of us, we have probably a really unique of like you have the actual experience from the player side and also the coaching side and the developmental side. And then I think between the two of us, probably have an interesting mix of contacts.
Yeah, my last 5 years of my career, I was in Bridgeport in the Atlantic League. Mm-hmm. And aside from being a pitcher, I was a pitcher, pitching coach. I ran all the camps, and I also did player personnel.
Oh, cool.
And I was telling Greg several years ago, I was in another internet startup business that I started up with an ex-partner of mine, where we basically educated and evaluated and exposed kids, to opportunities, to get to whatever high school, better high schools, college, pro ball. We started out, it was just pro ball, where guys that got released or guys that didn't get drafted, we were finding them jobs with organizations, whether it was, back in affiliated ball, independent ball overseas, so on and so forth. And we got to a point where we thought it was really going to take off and explode. And my ex-partner kind of screwed me, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so one of the things through my experiences of playing and also doing the other stuff I just said, and now, being a business owner and having this facility, I kind of get it from, every end now, as opposed to just as a player or as a coach. So I get it from an ownership standpoint. I get it from a player personnel standpoint.
Yeah, that's really good perspective.
And with that being said, when you talk about the pro game, I understand, how do you make your bottom line better, right? How can you get more people in the stands? How can you get more exposure for your brand? How can you get more people to feel, warm and fuzzy about baseball again with all the bullshit that's gone on, with the COVID and with strikes and with labor relations and on and on and on and on.
I know. I wish they just wouldn't even advertise that stuff. It's like not helping anything.
But with that being said, I think, from my perspective, the way you do it is you kind of get back into the community grassroots wise, and you kind of like start establishing more of that brand, whether you're the Mets, Yankees, Phillies, Red Sox, or whatever. And that's what I was talking about, like the baseball schools, like when I played in Puerto Rico, you saw all of the different baseball schools, like
Right.
The Mets have a school, the Yankees, the Phillies, and then in Dominican, but they don't have them here, where I felt like if they had it here, like as an example, if we had in our facility, the New York Mets baseball school, every freaking kid on Long Island would want to play for that baseball team. You know what I mean? Several years ago,
Yeah.
I coached with Hanks Yanks, which was, I mentioned it in the one conversation. I don't know if you can hear me clearly enough, but a guy named Ray Negron, who's worked for the Yankees for a long time, when his kids were the age, he started up Hanks Yanks, and Hank Steinbrenner was giving them whatever, like 100
Yeah,
grand.
he was throwing them like 50 grand or something, right?
Right, like 50 to 100 grand a year, and they were running it. And the point of it is, Ray's not a business guy. He's just kind of a goofy dude that works for the Yankees, and wanted his son to have a chance to play. But they could have, and I used to talk to him about it from a business standpoint. I'm like, Ray, right now we have like 2 teams. We can have like 50 teams and pack it out and charge anything, because these kids are going to want to play and they're going to want to be associated.
Wear that jersey. Like, honestly, like think back to when you were a kid, like that was like the coolest thing in the world. Like, remember Little League, and like they finally assigned you to a team and you're like, oh, I'm the Phillies again. I was always so annoyed.
Right. Where now what's happened is the Little Leagues, I don't want to say they become insignificant, because kids still play Little League ball, but now it's all about travel ball, right? So
Totally.
when I was a kid, there was like 2 or 3 travel teams. Now there's like on Long Island, now there's like 2,000 or 3,000, so
yeah, my nephews are going through it right now, and it is amazing. And also I know, and I might be a little dated with these comments, but when I was at baseball back 2007-ish, Cal and Billy Ripken were really, like, I did a bunch of Nike clinics with them.
Yep.
From a league perspective, and we would showcase them at All-Star, like in San Francisco. And, those guys have kind of like, at least in the New Jersey, and baseball is really big in this area.
Yep.
All of the like Babe Ruth leagues have gone away and been replaced with.
You live near Diamond Nation?
I'm in Basking Ridge. I don't know where that is.
Diamond Nation is right near, I'm trying to remember the name of the town, but it's right near Bernardsville.
That's me. Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, Diamond Nation is in, I can't remember the name of the town, but
we're in a nice, all right, they're in Hunterdon County. All right, they're in Flemington, which is like a half an hour south. I know exactly where that is.
Flemington.
That got built as, I think I played my senior year ball there.
I've been there a million times recruiting and seeing tournaments. And
yeah, that's a big facility.
It's really, really nice. Jack Cust, do you know that name?
Mm-hmm.
Jack Cust, his dad was a longtime high school baseball coach in New Jersey, like a legend, won lots of state tournaments. And Jack Cust Jr. Played in the big leagues with the A's and with the Orioles for probably like 10 to 15 years. And he built that complex, him and his dad.
That complex is amazing.
Yeah, him and his dad raised the money and did all that stuff and built that complex. And they're like baseball legends. But that place, as nice as it is, that's probably just like a smidgen of what the Ripken brothers do, as you know.
It's so funny because they just seem to have almost replaced the league name of like, we used to have like, you'd graduate up to like Babe Ruth, and then
Right.
all of a sudden it became Ripken baseball.
That's right.
And they're definitely being funded from a league perspective too, when it comes to like jerseys. Like there's definitely some uniformity to all of it. That obviously, like they've got a big name.
Yeah, and they have obviously the complex in Maryland. They own a minor league team. They're
Yeah.
they're super involved with youth sports. They make a ton of money from it. I know Billy because I played against him.
Oh my God, he's insane.
Yeah, funny dude.
He's so funny.
Yeah, crazy guy. But yeah, so with that being said, yeah, the Orioles, obviously because of that, the Ripken affiliation, are a little bit more involved with youth sports, but they're like unique in that sense. Where, in my opinion, like the Mets, the Yankees, whatever town you live in, they should be more involved in youth sports and in little league and in travel ball and in the community and having a baseball school and all that kind of stuff. Because if they did that, everybody's talking about how the numbers are down in baseball, not as many kids are playing, and
blows my mind.
And everybody talks about how, they're not really engaging the stars and marketing them the way the NBA and the NFL does and all that stuff. And I feel like this would be the way for them to do that, and if you have those contacts with the front office people, it's like, why would you guys not do that? It's not like it's going to cost you really that much money. And plus, what you get back from it is immeasurable.
Yeah. So just a little bit of an insight, because I think this might be really helpful. So I'm trying to think of all right. So I have two different work experiences that might really speak to this. And honestly, I think let's start with the Mets, because first of all, they're in your backyard.
Yep.
But also, I just think that the Mets are definitely more interested in listening to pitches like what coming from us, as opposed to the Yankees. The Yankees are always, and God bless them, they have the ability to be a pain in the ass, but they're always a little bit more tricky to kind of start to get to motivate.
Yep.
Timing is obviously tricky. Those guys are all motivating to get back. But I think what's interesting is, from two different work experiences, is obviously the league has the RBI program that is more focused on
inner city
youth. And then interestingly enough, I went in and met with someone about a year and a half ago. I was working for a youth sports nonprofit, which I'm never doing nonprofit again. It's the worst.
Get it? Yeah.
The theory is fabulous, and the idea of helping kids play sports was why I signed up. And then having to deal with those people is like you want to put a gun to your head.
Yep.
Everything is so slow. But interestingly enough, one of the things that all of the teams do, and this is when you talk to their human resources department, they all have dollars set aside for like a big community day. What's tricky with that is, with all of the game days that these guys typically have, it's not like they have time to go out into the community and hand deliver our equipment that we were giving them or anything like that to the kids, because those guys are like living at the ballpark, like they can't, that's the staff, but they have a lot of money to do a community day.
Yep.
So my thought is, if they put that money, and it's around 50 grand, if they put that money into purchasing uniforms for 8, 10, 12 teams that would live on forever in your facility, but if they did a day where they bought a couple players, they brought their staff, they did a big volunteer day, they can check that box of, yes, we did our volunteer day with the city or with the kids. And then, they donated my whole thing is, how nice would it be for them to donate some equipment that would live on forever, housed potentially at your facility or something like that. That's something that I know for a fact they have dollars set aside for. So I think there's a way to tap into that budget. And then they all have a community development budget. So they have a community team. It's usually strapped. It's usually 2 people. But those guys have a budget that's specifically targeting inner youth. But from a hockey perspective, and the Rangers actually do a really good job with this. So the Rangers have a junior Ranger program. Part of it is aimed at inner city youth, and kind of can check that box of even us as UB Sports starting to tackle the fundraising and the charitable side of things, and that we're starting to check that box. But the junior Rangers totally go after the very well funded teams in Greenwich.
Yep.
You know, so I think that they stretch, and then that program encompasses all branches of, hey, my parents can afford my uniform, my field time, my blah, 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 my brand new Under Armour cleats and everything, boom. And hey, let's make sure Johnny, who's got a ton of potential from inner city Harlem, has the opportunity to come out and like wear a Mets jersey and play at your facility. So I think that if like we can talk to them about almost addressing all of those issues with one umbrella, I think we've got something.
I agree.
But I think the Mets are a good one to start with.
Yeah, there's we're probably about 15 minutes from Citi Field where we're located, and a lot of the you know, the Wilpons and Katzes and the ownership live in the area, not too far from where we're at. You know, like Sands Point and stuff like that, which is right down the block from us. I actually played against Jeff Wilpon in junior college.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he got drafted by the Expos, believe it or not. I don't think he ever signed or played, but that's another story.
I feel like we have so many. I'm so excited to hang out with you.
but like just the concept of like what you just said, the junior Rangers, just the concept of having like the junior Mets as an example.
The junior
is
Mets.
It's not only a chance for them to get the brand out there in the community, but it's also, you know, it's not just charity. They can actually, you know, make money from doing it now. Not that revenue is going to make or break, you know, a major league team, but, you know, I'm sure they'd rather make money than lose money. And I know, as far as from a brand perspective, like we had talked about that day, like when I played in Italy, AC Milan was getting kids at 8 years old, you know? So like if you were a good soccer player,
Yeah.
somebody from AC Milan found you, you know what I mean? Or Juventus or some of the other teams. If you were good, somebody found you, and now they kind of had control of you and can track you from a young age. Now, how come they don't do that here in baseball? You know, the NBA does a little bit of a better job than that with their junior NBA program and with their camps and with their clinics and stuff like that. They're a lot more out in the community. They actually they run a camp. The Knicks do out by you, Greg, at that private school. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it the Bass School or something?
Oh, I think I worked on that project too.
Yeah. The Ross School.
What's it called?
The Ross School.
Ross, that's it. The Ross School. Yeah, it's like big bucks to go there. But the Knicks, you know, the Knicks are in the community, you know, where like the Mets a few years ago used to run like Mets camps, but it wasn't anybody from the Mets. It was like, you know, for lack of a better term, just some average Joe from the community that I don't know if he knew somebody in the Mets, and now he's running Mets camps.
Honestly, I think how it happens is they get this idea that they're going to do a Mets camp. They task this community team of go out and find somebody to do it, and then they just push it off. Like that's what goes down, because there's literally 2 people in that department. Like they don't have time to operate all the things they need to operate in the stadium, and then also turn around and do the stuff in the community. But I think what you're hitting on, which is really important, is like one of the pain points that the junior Rangers said to me, and again, I think this translates to the junior Mets, is they have all these kids signed up. Like they've already kind of even crossed that hurdle of like, they've got a bunch of kids. They want to start to build a community. Like they want the kids to be able to interact. They want the kids to share their latest, hey, I went to this camp and it was really fun. Or, hey, we had this baseball clinic today and it was awesome. Like they want to kind of connect everybody on a platform and start to facilitate these people feeling like they're part of something. And even the idea of like, hey, can we just blast all these guys free tickets to next Saturday's game? You know, and again, build the brand, build it into the community, get them in the stands, get them buying that t-shirt, that hot dog, and that pennant. Like for the Mets perspective, it totally behooves them to start talking to kids at a certain age, because then they become baseball fans for life, and they don't do it.
Right.
That's where I think we provide a huge solution to them. So I think the idea that we would have the ability to do actual clinics and facilities through you, in addition to offering them a social platform to market to these kids, is really a massive win-win for them.
Yeah, no doubt. And now you're saying like, so the stadium ops people are the same people that are whatever in charge of like community outreach and
so stadium ops is its own world.
Right.
Those guys are the best.
Right. Right.
Why those damn fields look so good.
Right.
So stadium ops is its own. So operations is kind of, let's say, it's like a third of the staff. Like stadium ops is a big number.
Yep.
There's a department, and it usually falls under the marketing department, but there's a department that's usually called community relations.
Right.
It's on every single team across every single league has a community relations department. These people are tasked with doing a million different things, and it's a department of 2 people.
Right. It's usually like an ex-big leaguer, let's say a guy like your dad, that goes out in the community every once in a while and shakes hands at a little league function.
That's usually like they hire the pros as guys that kind of come in and do that, but there's actually like an executive.
Oh, okay.
There's an executive that he's charged with running whatever the charitable or organization arms of the team are. So for instance, like the Jets are owned by the Johnson family.
Yep.
They're right down the street. Staff of 2. They have 4 separate initiatives that these 2 people have to run. 3 of them have nothing to do with football. They're literally the personal family foundations of the Johnsons. So they run like Alzheimer's, and they run, there's pediatric cancer,
Right.
and they run a 3rd thing. And then honestly, their 4th thing is underserved football players in the community. Like, so my point is these people are just really, really stretched. So for instance, like the Wilpons personal charity might be run by this staffer at the Mets.
Got it.
But this person is also in charge of turning around and saying, like, let's get baseball playing in Harlem. Let's get them kids in the Long Island that don't have as much. Like, that poor person is so stretched that if we can kind of come in with a plan of here's our way to market to the underserved youth and the served,
Right.
but here's our way to get you out in the community. That person is so underwater from a work perspective. It's crazy.
No, you hit it on the head. You just said it. That's exactly right.
Honestly, like these guys, and again, typically the teams do not hire the sharpest knives in the drawer for this position. So you're dealing with a lot of, and again, like we'll try and see who that person, I'll look and see who it is at the Mets.
It's somebody's uncle or cousin or daughter or sister.
Oh, and they're always a nightmare.
Yeah.
But sometimes, honestly, and this is where like I did really, really strong work with the Rangers and the Knicks because the person who was overseeing that department was actually intelligent, and it was like amazing what we could do when someone had half a brain. So let me dig in and see if I can figure out who it is from the Mets. But I think between the 3 of us, we can grab a meeting with those guys. And again, it's kind of tough timing because I think they're really crazy now that they've actually announced what the plan is with the season coming back. But let's at least get the conversation rolling that if it doesn't happen this summer, we're like very well poised. Because again, they take forever to plan. Let's get it rolling so that, and it's crazy to think this, but like pitchers and catchers is 7 months away. If they keep it with the typical time, it's like Valentine's Day. Like that's going to be here before we know it.
That's right.
And I say we do that. I say we're not pitching them for this season. We want to start to have these conversations so that you guys can launch this for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real value for the team is, again, getting yourself out in the community
100%.
with camps, clinics, a full-on baseball school, and their own junior Mets teams, because now it's not a charity case. Now you're actually
competitive.
You're competitive.
Yeah.
And you're killing one bird with like 5 different stones.
But honestly, they should definitely. I mean, again, like they should be getting any kid that's playing baseball in your area should be wearing a junior Mets uniform.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2. Like I said, there used to be like 3 or 4 travel teams on Long Island. Now there's like 3,000 or 4,000, and it's become so diluted.
It's crazy.
That like half of these teams, I hate to say it, but they suck. And like especially when I was coaching at the college level, a dad would tell me like, hey, well, my kid's playing travel ball, and I was like, yeah, no offense, him and 6 million other kids are. It doesn't really hold any weight anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
I gotta say, I was so proud of my nephews. So first of all, my husband grew this absolutely horrific COVID handlebar mustache. Like it's so bad. He actually shaved it last night. I almost fell out of the couch. I was so excited. But my 7-year-old nephew looks at him and goes, Dennis Eckersley. And I was like, how do you know Dennis Eckersley? And he's like, I was watching the 1992 World Series the other day on ESPN, and I was like, oh my God, God bless you. I'm so sick of these freaking kids with these damn video games that, like, I was so proud that my little nephew was like strategically watching old World Series games because he started pitching and he was like asking me all these questions, and he was so cute because he like, I saw him have his computer out the other day and I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm looking at the stats of, and he was going through pitchers, and I was like, oh, thank God, we haven't lost them all.
That's hilarious. That's great.
Oh, it was Dennis Eckersley. And my husband was like, do you know who that is? I was like, of course I know who that is. I was like, Dennis Eckersley. It was a big deal. But I think that there's definitely an appetite for it. Let me see if I can do some digging on my end on the Mets organization, and I'll put that as a to-do for me. To put in some time to kind of just do a LinkedIn search of who's – good thing with that organization is a lot of people don't leave. I don't think they have as much turnover as like the Yankees do. So let me see who I know that's still there. And let's maybe get us back together at the end of next week, or middle to end of next week, and see if we can kind of continue this. Because I think there's a lot there. And I think that if we get one of these to succeed, it's a pretty simple blueprint to pitch to a lot of other teams.
No doubt. They'll all be in.
Yeah. Because it's easy. Again, these people have no time. So any type of administrative relief, any type of preset program that we can say, hey, the Mets bought into this and this is their success rate. Now they've got X number of kids with their brand walking around town.
Yep.
I think would be huge because, again, these guys don't have, besides not a ton of brain power, they just don't have a lot of time.
No, and also for a lot of their, let's say, retired guys that aren't too old, that are whatever in their 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys want to give back. They want to coach. So now that you could say that, you know, hey, look, my son's playing for a junior Mets team.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's being, his coach is, you know, Johan Santana or whoever, you know, an ex-Man, Howard Johnson's his coach or something. That goes a long way because the kid might not really appreciate it at the time, but the parents do because the parents know who they are, you know?
100%. And quite frankly, a lot of times, at least like my experience with a lot of the alums from the team, and everybody, quite frankly, utilizes their alums. And some people do a really good job. Some people, I think, do a really poor job. You know, look, these guys want to stay in their comfort zone. You know, they know sports. They know baseball. They know how to coach kids. Like I had a poor kid on the Rangers who's Russian. His English is like horrific. I had him out at a clinic and he goes, he's like, I'm not going to be able to talk to them. And I go, they don't know how to hold a stick. I was like, these kids are from the inner city. They've never even seen a hockey stick before. I said, so just show them how to use. So again, like those athletes feel so much more comfortable as opposed to like getting up on a podium and trying to do a motivational speak. Like that's not everyone's bread and butter.
No doubt.
But I think that these guys, you know, put in the right youth setting, they feel so comfortable. So they thrive and they do really well coaching kids. Because again, they're speaking, everybody was a kid at some point. Everybody started with a bat and a glove and a ball. And I think that they feel so comfortable. So it empowers them. They look good. They look good in front of the Mets or the Yankees or whomever. And it just makes them feel back in part of the family and useful again. So it's really a good use also because the teams struggle with what to do with those guys.
Yeah, no, it's win-win for everybody.
Yeah, this is exciting.
And for the team, in this case the Mets, now all of a sudden, not only are they branded in the community, but now all the parents are like, my kid's playing for the junior Mets. My kid's playing for the junior Mets. We're going to the game tonight because they're honoring the 14 red team tonight at Citi Field, or we're going to the game tonight because we feel like we're one of the Mets. You know what I mean? So it's good for everybody.
I agree with you, and I think that's totally, again, it is a little bit of placating to the parents, but in a way, that's always successful.
Yeah, well, you're going to be a parent soon, so you'll appreciate it. You know what I mean?
I'm telling you, we were in the midst of like a very intense moment in the sonogram where it's like, does he have 2 kidneys? Does he have 2 lungs? Like all of these things. And no joke, my husband's like, I don't see the gold medals. What week do they come? And I'm like, oh my God, like the doctor had no sense of humor. I was like, Tom. I don't think he was actually understanding the severity of the moment of like, is the heart pumping? Like, are these like organs? And he's like, there are no golf clubs or hockey sticks there. Like, what the hell? And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I hate to say that runs through all dads. I asked the same thing about the squash racket with my kids.
I I hate to say though that when we found out what we were having, and it's like so sad to say this because you want to be like, oh, I just want a healthy baby and blah blah blah. They're like, you're having a boy. We're like, yes. And honestly, it's so. I mean, I'm obviously a girl. But I grew up with all boys. Like every one of my parents' friends had 2 or 3 boys. I grew up with all boys, and I just was like, I'm just a little bit more. It's a little bit more my area. I'm a little more comfortable with that.
My first daughter is 16 now, and my wife thought she was having a boy the whole time. And then when we found out that she was a girl, after 5 months, she had that first like minute of like, oh, great.
Yeah. It's
So,
really.
like,
I feel like we're destined to have a bunch of boys. So I mean, my husband's one of 4 boys. So
Wow.
yeah, he's the youngest of 4. There's a lot of boys kicking around, but we're pumped about it.
But we thought the same thing because my wife was athletic and I played football, baseball, and basketball growing up. So, we're like, well, she'll play this, she'll play that. But you know what? Both my girls now are totally into volleyball. They're volleyball players. My
Good
16
for them.
is 6 foot and she's left-handed. So we'll see.
It's funny.
Having fun.
Ironically, Buzz's parents, one was an architect and one was an interior decorator. So like very creative people. I was an art major in college. Like I have a very strong like art background. So I'll never forget like showing up in the locker room freshman year and they were like, so what's your major? Like assuming it was a fluff major like everybody else's because obviously you're an athlete. And I was like, I'm an art major. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm drawing, painting, double art major. They were like, what?
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Colby up in Maine.
Oh, in Maine. A buddy of mine's son is a lacrosse coach there. My older daughter wants to be an art major, so she's looking at like Pratt and she's looking at like.
Well, they were trying to get me to go to like freaking Carnegie Mellon, and I was like, I'm playing hockey. I was like, I'm happy to do both, but I was like, I need the opportunity to go to a school that's got. And I was there for a unique time. We were D1, and we were like us in skiing was the only D1, and so it's just a unique opportunity when you're a D1 athlete at a not D1 school.
Yep.
But I liked it. I mean, honestly, like I had a wonderful college experience and, can't say enough about my friends and all of that, but it's a unique experience. Like we dropped down to D3 my sophomore year and it was weird. Again, at the time you didn't have the option to go play pro women's hockey. You could now.
Yeah. I
was a little offended. I got a call from one of the teams recently and I was like, oh my God, are they calling me in? Am I going to play? And they were like, do you want to coach? And I was like, what the? I was like, I'm not freaking coaching.
That's cool.
I'm so offended.
That's funny that you're an art.
Forget how old I am.
That's funny. Yeah, my daughter's looking at like fashion and stuff like that because she looks like Olive Oil from Popeye,
That's so funny.
She's like 6 feet, like 115 pounds, She's like skinny as a rail. I'm 6'6". And my wife's like 5'7", so my younger daughter's like 5'8", and she's 13. So
oh man,
they're gonna be tall, and they love volleyball, and they try playing other sports, but they found their thing. So as a parent, that's all you can hope for. They find their thing, they're happy, and
you know what? I gotta say, the crazy thing with girls' sports, and this is an interesting angle for us, is like it gets real bitchy. So I mean, honestly, I think it does. Like they're freaking there's so much freaking estrogen, and they're so bitchy. And I think that like the idea that we can be promoting like a really safe, fun area for girls to like come in and talk sports is really something that I think is not like this whole WESPN thing is such a crock of shit. And it's just, I think that if we can kind of find a way that we can have like maybe the conversation starts out about sports, but it's okay that they like art and fashion and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think it's a unique, and again, I think that there's a huge transition from playing high school sports where like my entire team wore pink dresses to the games and like we were girls. And honestly, I showed up in college and they should have been DNA testing half my team because there was definitely a lot of Y chromosomes going on. I walked in the locker room and they were like, the tennis courts are across the way. And I was like, I'm your new defenseman. And they were like, what? Look, I think that's a transition that quite frankly, like I was not prepared for. My father was appalled. He's like, this girl just pulled her equipment off and she's the other new freshman defenseman. She weighs 200 pounds more than you do. I was like, Dad, let's move on because this is not like we got to deal with it.
Okay.
Like this is reality.
Yeah, we're up in Maine now.
I love Maine. Maine's great.
Flag shirts.
A lot of plaid shirts.
A lot of flannel. That hasn't gone away up there yet. Coming back in style, it never left Maine.
A lot of
One of
construction.
those jokes. What's the difference between a woman in Maine and a moose? One of them wears a flannel shirt.
I'm telling you guys, my dad was like, I was not braced for it. And I used to go to this really fancy hockey camp up in Massachusetts. So like, I think on the drive home, my dad called the guy and was like, dude, did you know that like all the girls on Kelly's hockey team are like men? And he's like, yeah, they have a reputation. That's why they're so good. And my dad's like, holy shit. They had me pick my defense partner. This girl was like a beast. And I was like, I want to play with her. Like I mean, at the time, I'm 5'10". I weighed 115 pounds. And this girl was like, I don't know, 5'4", 250. I was like, she's perfect. I was like, she was a brick.
Oh, God.
It was great. All right, well, guys, Al, thank you so much for your time. It's so fun. I can't wait to tell my dad all these names. He's going to be so excited.
Oh yeah, no problem. Anytime.
And I'll get us back together at some point next week. But this has been a really fun conversation, and I'm going to do a deep dive into my LinkedIn network with the Mets.
I just think just to reiterate that point again, like from a pro sports standpoint, I mean, to try and get as an example of that big league guy that, you know, is going to buy into UB Sports, or that big
Yep.
guy that you're going to try and whatever promote or whatever. I don't think that's really the angle or the goal
I
that
agree.
we want. You know what I mean? Like, who cares if Noah Syndergaard, you know, goes on UB Sports or not? I would much rather have the Mets organization and us having an agreement where it's great for us, it's great for, you know, it's great for UB obviously, and it's great for the Mets, you know.
I definitely think that's the angle, because even just crunching the numbers with, like, I was crunching the Junior Ranger numbers of like, if we brought them over, like they have like 75,000 kids signed up in their system. Like if we can migrate them over, and like, I would imagine that, you know, again, I think baseball's done a poor job, to your point, of integrating with the youth, but I think that that's something that's got to be on their fix list.
No doubt.
So if we can get them at that volume and get them migrated over, to me, for UB Sports, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to be dealing with these mammoth big numbers and big organizations than trying to pick off the Basking Ridge Little League team.
I
No
totally
doubt.
100%.
Yeah. And also it's notoriety, credibility. We've got recognizable names and organizations and professional teams and leagues. And I definitely like your angle there, for sure.
Okay, good.
All right, guys. Well, I'm off to the rest of the chaos of my Friday, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day and your weekend.
You too. Bye, Kelly.
Hey,
Bye,
Jeff.
guys. Bye, Al. Bye, Greg.
Bye, Greg.